do you say to the slippery slope argument that this opens the door to things like polygamy and things like that? Bestiality and animals, right?
You want to call it slippery slope?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, the number one thing I would say is that anytime anybody brings up polygamy or bestiality or any of that stuff, it's because they don't have a good reason for why we should take rights away from gay couples in California. They don't want to talk about the gay couples, the family next door, who are going to have their rights eliminated by Prop 8. So they're changing the subject to all kinds of other things. And so anytime that happens, it means they don't have a good argument for why there should be discrimination against these people today. The second point I would make is that Massachusetts has had the freedom to marry for same-sex couples for 5 years now. Canada has had it for about 5 years now. No locusts, no floods, no bestiality, no polygamy. In fact, Massachusetts has the lowest divorce rate in the country. The countries that respect people and treat them equally, like states like California and Massachusetts, have always understood that the better we treat each one of us, the stronger the community is for all of us. And our opponents are trying to change the subject by scaring people. And so I would not spend a whole lot of time talking about polygamy and bestiality because that's changing the subject. There is not a slippery slope here. It's a false claim. Each thing gets decided and discussed on its merits. But what is happening today, and what people are voting on today, is whether rights should be taken away from one group of Californians today, not something down the road.
How do you respond to the argument that marriage, the word marriage, just is inherently dual-gendered, and so that it doesn't even make sense to consider same-sex marriage?
Well, the answer really is that it's just not true. That marriage actually had, the history of marriage is a history of extraordinary change throughout human history. Virtually every human society over several thousand years has had an institution of marriage, but it has differed dramatically in different countries, different places, different times, including right here in the United States. Marriage has never had one fixed meaning that has been true throughout history. Never. It has always changed. Our opponents like to say, for 6,000 years, the traditional definitions are, they're just not reading their own history. They're not even reading their own Bible in some cases. It's simply not true. The history of marriage is a history of extraordinary change. In the United States, happily, the change has largely been to welcome people in to this institution that is so meaningful to people. And to say that barriers that used to be defended as natural, or as part of the definition, or as God-given, or as necessary, turn out not to be necessary or natural or God-given at all. And society is better off. It was better off when we ended race restrictions on marriage that were defended as part of the definition of marriage, as part of what it had to be. Our society was better off when we ended the legal subordination of women and how women were treated in marriage, which was part of the definition of marriage at one time. And we changed it. So it's simply untrue to say that there's some definition out there with regard to the law that has always been the case, and now it's changing. And I actually also would look at it from the flip side. If you ask most of us today, what do we think of as the definition of marriage? What's the most important thing in marriage? What are the elements of marriage? I would say first that marriage is not defined by who is denied it. Marriage is defined by the values and the qualities excuse me, and the meaning that it has in people's lives. So marriage is about love. Marriage is about commitment. Marriage is about bringing people together to create a new family and a new extended family and a kinship network that knits people together in life. Marriage is about providing community support and acknowledgement for people's commitment to one another and the struggle to build something in life and contribute and care for one another. These are the values of marriage. These are what matter. Now, religions are free to teach whatever they want, as we said earlier. No one would take that away from them. But the reason the law gets involved in marriage is because of these values of uniting people, supporting people, encouraging people to care for one another and be there for one another, helping them to care for one another. Government doesn't issue bar mitzvah licenses. Government doesn't issue communion licenses. Government issues marriage licenses because of these values, because of these meanings. And gay people share those values and meanings and needs. And it is deeply wrong to take them away. And that's the answer to the question. People are free to think whatever they want about their own marriage. We all know that just because there's an institution of marriage, it doesn't mean that any one person's marriage is going to be good or bad. We've all gone to weddings where we sit there thinking, how could she marry him? But that's their life, their choice to make. And it's between them and their community and their family and their faith and their own choices. That's not for the law. What is for the law is to treat people equally in the fulfillment of those aspirations as human beings under the law.